say he's gonna be alright, but it might OD before the end of night. Yeah, you say he's gonna be alright, but it might OD before the end of night. Yeah, you say he's gonna be alright, but it might OD before the end of night. Yeah, you say he's gonna be alright, but it might OD before the end of night. Yeah, down the streets. Yeah. Will you down the streets? Yeah. Will you? You say he's gonna be alright, but it might OD before the end of night. Yeah, you say he's gonna be alright, but it might OD before the end of night. Yeah, you say he's gonna be alright, but it might OD before the end of night. Yeah, you say he's gonna be alright, but it might OD before the end of night. Yeah, down the streets. Yeah. Will you down the streets? Yeah. Will you?
Turn your radio up. Whoa. Radio time. Whoa. You're now listening to Street Apologist. Street Apologist. Street Apologist. Street Apologist. On the radio. Street Apologist. Street Apologist. Street Apologist. Street Apologist. Whoa. On the radio.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. What's up? My name is Vocab, and you are now live with Street Apologist Live, Street Apologist Radio. I am very glad for today's show. Excuse the lateness. We started about 5% late. I saw someone in the chat say, I thought that was mildly funny. I didn't make that up. But it's all my fault. No one else's fault. We got started late. I had some technical issues. And so apologies for that. And someone said they liked the intro song, Who Is That By? That was by Jonathan Soko. He is a producer. He goes by Track Diesel. And sometimes he shows up in the live chat. He's a great guy. And I'm very excited about today's show. And I appreciate his patience in getting everything set up. And also patience. Monday night we had like almost a 2-hour conversation. And now we're going to try to replicate some of that as well as have some new things tonight with an audience. Talking to a member of the Nation of Gods and Earths. He goes by the name of All-Powerful Allah. What's up? Welcome to Street Apologist Live.
Peace. Thank you for having me, and peace to your audience and everyone tuning in.
Yes, indeed. Everybody, I see you in the live chat, and I appreciate everyone that is here. Shout out. I see we got Divine Allah. I see we also got some classic folks. What's up, Nate 3PO? What's up, Believing Thinkers? What's up, Radical Love? Hey, D New all the way from Canada. Hey, Roxby, who rocks. And also we got Born Allah. We also got Rambo 7, our favorite recurring Muslim guest. And who else we got in here? There's a couple of people I'm missing. So who else did I miss? Well, hey, Lord Zaid 5 we got. What's up, Mark Cleveland? Good to see you. Hey, Leader for Christ. Hey, Galatians 3:29. Believing Thinkers in the house, a.k.a. Sean. I'm not going to do everybody. Hey, what's up, Andrew? All the way from Australia. So shout out to everybody. And we will probably have some time later on in the show for some questions. And then you guys can interact with both of us. And we'll try to give short answers so we can get to as many as possible. But I'll tell you a little bit about how today's show came about. And then I'll actually let today's guest tell you his perspective. And then we'll basically just get started. So if you guys see a while ago, I don't know, almost a month at this point, we did a broadcast, something like what is the Nation of Gods and Earths, or something like that. It was like an hour and a half live stream and I kind of had a little presentation with some graphics and stuff, and I went through some of the basics of a lesser known philosophy. If you were in hip hop in the 90s, you might have known, not as many people know nowadays, but I still think it's important to understand. And so went through that to the best of my ability at that time. And then I had a couple people leave comments, and a couple people hit me up, and one of them was today's guest. And he hit me up, and he hit me up in a comment and also on a message, and he said, hey, here's some things I'd like to make corrections on. And then we had a great phone conversation 2 days ago, and I said, would you be willing to have this same kind of discussion in public? So today, we're not necessarily going to correct every little thing if we disagree on. Today's not just that, although that we will ask each other those kind of questions if we see fit, you know what I mean? It's mainly to have this dialogue and discussion so he can feel what he needs to say in regards to that show, because he's an adherent, of course, of what are sometimes called 5%ers. Officially, I think, say Nation of Gods and Earths. But that's sort of my version. What about yours? How would you say the day came about, and also why are you doing it? Because some people said maybe you shouldn't do it. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, for me, I typically like to go online and search every now and then. Just type in 5% or Nation of Gods and Earths and just see what's new, just to stay abreast to what's being said about my nation. And I came across your show. And when I came across the show, I sat and I listened, and I'm like, wow, in regards to some of the things that were being said, like, okay, well, that's not right. Well, that's partially right, and that, what I mean? So, and I know you have a listening audience, and I saw you have like quite a few subscribers to the channel. So I'm like, well, he's reaching a few people. And I looked you up some more, and I saw the presentation you did on June 1st, actually here in Detroit. If I had known about it, I told you, if I had known about it, I'd have been there physically to have a discussion with you. And you also had an interview with the brother from PID back in December.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right. Good call.
Y'all talked about the nation then, because one of their members, his brother, if I'm not mistaken, ended up becoming the 5%er, which kind of like disbanded the group and all of that. So I saw that you had quite developed an interest into the nation, and I'm about 23, 24 years into the nation. So I'm deeply embedded in it. So anything that's going on and being said about it, I want to be active in it and addressing it. So we had our phone conversation. I was surprised you responded at first, but you did, and we had a phone conversation after the fact, and it went well. So here we are. And in regards to why, like I said, I'm not one to just see something and if it's not accurate in my level of understanding, just let it go by. I've been known to reach out to merchants selling universal flags, and they shouldn't be doing it. So I'll send a cease and desist order and things of that nature. Like I'm that person. So of course I'm gonna hear something on air and be like, yo, let me contact those people and see what they got to say about that. So here we are.
That's what he just said is exactly would be my understanding as well. You said one thing I didn't know about before. You said if a merchant was selling a universal flag, to those who don't know what that is, you see part of the symbol of the universal flag and the Nation of Gods and Earth actually on your screen right now, next to his picture. You're saying you reach out to them and tell them to stop if they shouldn't.
If you have no affiliation whatsoever to Allah's 5% nation, commonly referred to as the Nation of Gods and Earth, if you have no affiliation to that, and if you're not sending no type of kickback to the nation in regards to the development and what you're making off of it, then you need to have someone you need to be talked to about that. Definitely.
All right. So, like, if a person did that, they would need to, say, for example, give some back to the school and
it would be a gesture, I would think. Unless you're just gonna just take someone's flag, it's a national symbol, and then just make all kind of money off of it and put it on all kind of products, and then not even give any type of kickback to where it even originated from. I think that's a slap in the face.
All right. So you say it's a nation. Some people may say, why? Like, why would you say it's a nation? You know, has a flag. Why would you say it's a nation? Because some. Go
How do
ahead.
you define nation?
What
What's the
I mean,
definition of nation?
people I think define it different ways. If you look up in the dictionary, you probably see two or three. One way people will define it is language, borders, and culture. That's one way
Okay.
people would describe it. But there's also a different way to use it where you could have almost maybe like a nation within a nation, and that's a little bit different. Like some people might say or the hip hop nation. See, that's sort of a different. Sometimes if you say hip hop nation, they mean that in a different way. But I mean, why do you say
But you pretty much touched on it, like you say, land and land, language
language,
and culture.
language, borders, culture is just standard
You
way?
are
Yeah.
like government. I mean, you have a system of elders. You know what I'm saying? The newborns. It's there's terms and labels for almost everything. So I mean, it is a nation, like you said, within a nation.
And someone mentioned in the chat that generally adherents don't like to say this is really a religion. I think they'll generally say it's a way of life. Is that correct?
Exactly. It's definitely a culture. It's a way of life. It's being more so than doing.
Okay. All right. And then you said newborns. To those who don't know, what's a newborn in regards to
Well,
the system?
would be a person who is being introduced to the knowledge of self, or being introduced to a lost 5% nation. Like this is their first take into it, and they're accepting the reality of that. Okay, I can see that. I want to know more. That would be a newborn.
All right. It looks like we've got some Hebrew Israelites joining. I'll read one comment. We don't have to spend much time on this. You don't even have to answer this. I'm just going to show you what one Hebrew Israelite says. I don't know if I really agree with this comment, but I'll put it on the screen because sometimes we'll interact with the comments. Let's see. So this is, let me put it up above us so you can see it. Torah Night Temple Judah Nat. Oh yeah, I know who that is. He says 5%ers took the principles from the Torah and left out the Most High. And that's why 5%ers are basically atheists, which is a form of Satanism. Now, this is a Hebrew Israelite, so they're not known. I don't mean to be funny, but they're not really known for their great nuance and understanding other people's worldviews. But would you be interested in interacting at all with that briefly?
Not necessarily. You know what I mean? I mean, if that's how he sees it, so be it. You know, we didn't take anything from anybody.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then you have other groups that say, well, they took the lessons and they took. I mean, everyone who are outside of Allah's 5% nation and have had some type of interaction with it always have some type of opposition to it as well, and claim that this came from that. But see, what I tend to see in my studies is that there are a lot of links into one chain. You know, I see a lot of links into a chain, and what Allah, the father of this nation, did was, as we say, crack the seal to where you're able to see the present day reality of what all these other things we're talking about.
All right. So this guy mentions the Torah. What would be sort of a general 5% view of say the Bible or the Torah? Is there sort of go ahead.
I would say like Allah is quoted for saying, I use all knowledge to benefit myself regardless to where it may come from. So yes, there is truth and knowledge within the Bible just as much so as it is within the Quran, but there's also things you have to dance through as well, because it can be it's been mixed, diluted, and tampered with over the years. So yes, truth is there, but there's also some misdirection there as well.
All right. One man, Lord Zaid 5, says 5%ers do not believe in the biblical God of religion. The knowledge we have goes beyond the Torah, and we wouldn't be atheists because we know who the living God is and teach about the living God. Is that generally accurate?
Exactly. And peace to the God, because I know him.
So, to those who don't know, who is the true and living God?
True and living God is Allah, the Son of Man, the black man, the original man.
So, how would you say it, within the nation of God's and earth's understanding, that what we have here is, when we say Allah, we don't mean one individual entity outside of humanity. We mean a collective group of humans. Is that accurate, or how? I want to make sure people understand what you're saying.
Well, Allah, and what you're saying in regards to body, because you mentioned that in the previous show when you talked about arm, leg, arm, and head.
Right,
the thing
right,
about
right.
that is every individual has an arm, a leg, and an arm and a head. So what it said before you get to head is supreme head, which is the highest form of intelligence. That will be the original man.
So the original man is the black man, the Asiatic black man, right?
It's the Asiatic black man. It's the original man. I mean, you pulled up a copy of the Supreme Wisdom Lessons. I think you had it in the last video that you did.
And I got it
in
here too.
Yeah, right. And in there, I think it will give you a definition of who the original man is, with the exception of where it says father of civilization, because I do not think that theirs has that in there. But it would say the original man is the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, father of civilization, and God of the universe.
Right, and so there's things I still am learning and don't know, but all the questions I've asked so far, just so everyone knows, as far as the ones I've asked so far, I knew the answer, but what I want to make sure happens is the audience understands, because when I announced this on Facebook, I had people say, is that a branch off the Hebrew Israelites? I actually had people say that, so I just saw there was sort of a
I think you get that type of confusion because when you did the show, you kind of dropped the people right in the middle of the theme without actually giving them like a chronological time frame of to what took place, how it took place, and why. Like when you're talking about W.D. Farad and Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you're talking about the 1930s. When you're talking about Malcolm and Allah, you're talking about the 1960s. That's a 30-year difference. Right. A lot happened in 30 years. And with Farad and Elijah, we're in Detroit. And with Malcolm and Allah, we're in New York. So we're talking about two totally different time frames, two ways of being in existence, and the fabric of America during those times. So, so I would think that, like, because you brought up Farad in the last show, so I will start there. You said that Farad was a white man, right? And in the presentation that you gave on June 1st, you called him the white master because he used Master Farad Muhammad as in the sense of saying that the black people still had a white master.
Yeah. That was a lightweight shot. Yeah, I did say that.
Right. So I would have to ask, where are you receiving your information, and what is your source of information for his ethnicity and origin? Because from my research, I found something different. So before I go to where I got mine from, where is yours coming from?
Well, that's a problem with Farad's origins, is it's sort of mysterious. So it seems like there's different tellings of it. Some of it I got from what I saw. This is the Nation of Islam's understanding of who Farad was, because when it was asked about this, my understanding within the Nation of Islam is what they said is that's so he can travel in and out of different societies, that Allah had blessed him and made him to be that way. And then it seems like when he said he was leaving, he said he was going back to the Middle East, and so there's different questions. I've heard some people speculate because of some of the words he used that he was Persian, for example. But so the problem is I read different biographies that gave different reasons. There are some people that claim there's official records, say for example, in relationship to police activity or when he first arrived, stuff like that. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
You familiar with the FBI files and the investigation that was done on Farad?
Yeah, I looked at those a little bit. I actually looked at those a little bit.
Okay, and if you look in there, because you also mentioned that Farad was at San Quentin and that he told the police that he was running a racket and he was only in it for the money, right?
That's so. You said that was a different person, is what you said when you emailed me, correct?
And that's kind of where I'm getting at here. We're talking about Wallace D. Ford versus W.D. Farad. Now, in the FBI files that are public record, it states that it was not definitely determined that Ford and Farad are the same person, and this was in 1956. And in '63, J. Edgar Hoover reported that Farad's print card has him as Caucasian and of Arabian descent. So he could not be full-blooded Caucasian because that's Ford. Farad was not. You know what I mean? So when you talking about arrest records and all of that, you're talking about a totally different individual. But you presented it to the audience as though it was Farad.
Well, that's not out of the seat. That's the only information I saw. Like what you just said. I think I mentioned that some accounts said he was mixed. I didn't say he was like. I don't think I ever said he was completely like white. I think it was sort of what people call biracial. But like what you just said, I've literally never heard before, and I'm not. Basically, everything is dialectical, meaning
right.
if I could see what the evidence is for what you're saying, then I wouldn't repeat that. I don't know right now because I've never seen that there's two different people.
He was arrested. He was arrested during, like you mentioned, in the voodoo cult murder that's documented, the Robert Harris incident. Yeah, he was arrested during that time. Yeah, he was questioned, but he did not say that I'm running a racket or I'm in it for the money, though. And if you find the original print of that, probably on microfilm these days or something like that, the caption on there is going to say where he says, "Here is my authority." He doesn't mention anything about running a racket.
But I thought that the voodoo cult article says that though.
Mm-mm. You have to show me that in print. I've read that quite a few times, and it has "Here's my authority" is his words to the detectives that are questioning him in that room.
All right, well, I'd be willing to go back and look at any of that. Like I said, it's a dialectic, meaning if a person there's a number of different things going on. You and I talked about disagreement at worldview issues, meaning you and I have a different anthropology, because I would hope by God's grace that I have a biblical Christian anthropology, meaning view of humanity. You have a different. Obviously, there's connections, but there's some big big differences going on. But that doesn't mean that it's ever a good idea for anybody if they're trying to do research and they really want to discuss a different worldview. It's never good to just straight out make up things or repeat things that aren't known. So I'm not about that. So if I have different information, I would give it. So, but really, I recognize this too. I was, just so you know, I was never making the argument that because Farad was arrested, therefore the nation of God's earth is false. Because that question has to be answered in a different meaning, because that's actually a logical fallacy where you say because of the source of something, therefore it's false. So that, just so you know, I wasn't making that. However, if it was true that he said to somebody, like apparently, for example, a guy like L. Ron Hubbard admitted, hey, this is essentially a racket. If he said that, then obviously that would be relevant to the veracity or not. So that would be the question there. But really, we could look at the claims in and of themselves regardless of the background.
Right. Now, you also say he's from the Middle East. What exactly is the Middle East?
Well, I know, so names for regions change over time. So I recognize that. So when I'm saying that in relation to today. Did he not say he's going back to Mecca? Now, I'm not saying he did. I'm saying, didn't he say? So I would define that as the Middle East. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because the East is, we got Asia and those countries, and then over here, Middle East, you know what I'm saying? Go ahead.
I would ask if you know exactly how the terms Middle East, Far East, and Near East were even established before we can even talk about Middle East.
A lot of those terms come from colonial European powers, and when they had so I don't deny that. But see, again, the origin of the term. But the thing is, I'm speaking in 2019. So what I mean by that is I'm using the understanding of names for places and regions that people use today, so they know what I'm talking about. Like,
you know, the East is only a term used by America, basically. Like, no one calls the Middle East outside of American and American influenced countries. It's the Far East and the Near East or West Asia. Now, no one uses the term Middle East but America. Like,
Okay.
the
But,
far,
well, I
far
mean,
everything, Far East is everything east of India. Near East is everything west of India, and that's where Arabia falls in the Near East section, or what they consider West Asia. Middle East is an American term.
all right. So, well, I don't know if
Farad
it's.
was Middle East because he wasn't American.
Well, remember though on the broadcast, I said he said he was going to Mecca. So regardless of if I said Middle East, he's still saying he's going to the same place. So
Right.
I mean, why do you? He's not from the continent of Africa. That's what I would mainly be saying by that. That's kind of the point.
Okay.
That's not now. Obviously, you can be a different ethnicity clearly and be from a different geographical region. That's not the argument I'm making either. The point is, it doesn't even seem like he meets the qualifications to even be an original man himself. There's the argument. I think that's a legitimate argument the 5%ers should tackle, because by a lot of people's understanding, it doesn't even look like he himself would be able to call himself an original man. That's what I'm saying by all that.
Okay. So, what exactly was Farad's purpose? Was it to come and be the original man, or was it to come and wake up the original man?
Well, he's called a savior.
By
Well, by Elijah Muhammad, for example, for one. I mean, he's called a savior, and I don't like. I mean, for example, you know the rapper from back in the day, Razkaz, right? Some people say Razkaz. He talked about him being the sort of like a divine manifestation of Allah in his songs. You know, like he would say, Master Farad Muhammad, like that's Allah manifested, something like
which
that.
was
Like,
which is the idea promoted, like you say, by Elijah. You know, that it's not proven that that's an idea promoted by Farad himself.
but see, that's the same place. Isn't that the same place we got these from? Is by Elijah.
Right? No. Elijah recited them. Yes, but he's not the origin of them. Farad came with the questions and the answers, and everyone there was required to learn them. And what we have in front of us today is Elijah's answers that are very near correct.
But that's according to Elijah, right? Because Farad, like
Elijah wasn't the only person in the temple at that time. There's plenty of other people that were sitting right next to him. Some of them lived longer than him. Some of them we've had the opportunity to talk to.
that's true, but the discussion and the supreme wisdom is between who and who, Farad and Muhammad. It's not by all the other students. I mean, Elijah Muhammad, for better or for worse, is the say what? I'm sorry.
I wouldn't even call it a discussion. It's a recitation. It's like I give you a Q&A to go home and commit to memory, and then when you come back, I'm gonna ask you the questions and you give me the answers. That's not really what we're having is a discussion. That's not a discussion. That's a recitation.
Right, I understand what you're saying. I mean, it's along the lines
that he, along with other people, have had to go through that process of. It's just that on February 20th, 1934, this is when he did it. And this is the one that's in circulation. Why? Because he became the leader of what's known as the Nation of Islam. So of course it would be his recitation that would be used as the recitation.
Right, I'm familiar with all that because for years before this ever happened, you know, Christians have had catechisms. So for example, the Westminster Catechism, there's a question, what is the chief end of man? You know, to know God and enjoy him forever, to glorify God and enjoy him forever. So like I'm familiar with all of that, but the thing is, what I'm saying is the conduit by which we receive this, it's through Elijah Muhammad, and the evidence. The reason why I would say that the evidence is the way that I know you don't call him this, so you could call him nothing. This isn't intended to be disrespectful. It's just the way I feel I am sort of constrained to call him. Clarence 13X. The way he came upon these lessons in the first place is by his association with the Nation of Islam. And so he's the one popularizing them on the streets, which they didn't want to happen. But the way he even came in contact was through, so even Clarence 13X is getting it filtered through the nation, because this isn't happening until the 60s when Clarence 13X is putting out the stuff on the streets. And from what I've seen, there's even been some changes. For example, the thing about the white man being the skunk upon the earth, that's taken out of some later editions. So there's some questions about the integrity of the text. Go ahead.
Before I can address that, I wanna touch on this name thing, right?
Okay. Okay.
What's the brother's name? William Griffin Jr. You know who that is?
I've heard that name. I don't know if I know who that is.
You called him Rakim Allah,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
right?
Well, I don't call him Rakim Allah though. I just call him
You
Rakim.
did. On the last show you did, you called him Rakim Allah.
Oh, I
So
did.
my
Well,
question is, if it's okay to call Mr. Griffin Rakim Allah, because Rakim is a variant of Rahim, which means kind and merciful. Allah is God, so Rakim Allah literally means the kind and merciful God. So if it's okay to call him a kind and merciful God, why is it not okay to call Allah, who is the teacher or the founder of where Rakim got his ideas from, the name that he chose for himself as well?
one key is that he wants people to call him father, and I don't know in any meaningful sense in the way he's a father to me. But you're saying no, but I've seen firstborn say when the father gave us these lessons.
You know why firstborns and elders say that? It's that it's used affectionately because many of them did not have a physical father present in their life. So they use the term father. The name Father Allah is not the name that he gave himself. He called himself Allah. That's it. Allah.
I got that.
People started saying Allah the Father, appreciate him and his son. And then later on, like in the 80s and 90s and all that, term Father Allah as a connected name starts to pop up. And this is who he is. His name he chose for himself, Allah. That's it. And then the elders called him father because, like I said, that was the affectionate term for him. So no, I won't say that he wants to be called father. That's not what I would say.
I understand, and that's one of the things. Just so you know, that's one of the things I respect about him is that he spent time and invested into youth that didn't necessarily have any earthly means to necessarily, reciprocate. And I think that's, an honorable thing that he did that. So I respect that. But just so you know, this is consistent for me, meaning Roman Catholics tell me to call their priest father. I don't call them father. The Bible says in Matthew 23:9, call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your father which is in heaven. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean your earthly father. That means other men who are not your father.
Yeah.
Because even Jesus talks about
the difference between what you're saying with the Catholics and with us is, like you said, they want you to call him father.
Right.
No one at the 5% nation, including Allah himself, ever
I understand.
Called me father.
Okay, I understand what you're saying by that. Then let me address.
Go ahead.
Sorry if I'm interrupting you. You can finish. Okay. So I hear you on that. So then what I'm saying is, so I've studied. I'm not any expert. I'm still learning, but I've studied the pre-Islamic history of Arabia a little bit, and in the pre-Islamic history of Arabia, in that general area, there's different varieties of Christians that thrived in the Arabian Peninsula. Obviously, there was also what the Muslims will later call pagans or polytheists, but those Arabic-speaking pre-Islamic Christians in their worship and in their liturgy, and even many of them today. So this is a totally non-Westernized context. A lot of people don't know about the Eastern churches, but they should. Those folks called the God of the Bible Allah, because this is before Muhammad said, Allah, and there's the Allah of the Bible. But those brothers and sisters of mine are calling God Allah. And so then for me to turn around and use that same terminology for a man who I see created by the one true God, you guys got to understand that's like a tall order to ask.
I'm not asking it. It will be difficult for you to do so if you don't subscribe to the idea. But that's why I use the Rakim Allah as an example. Well, if you do it for an MC, I don't see why you couldn't do it for a man.
I got you.
Impacted the country and the world as a whole.
I got you. I mean, I don't know. That show felt like it was a while ago, either because that's how I hear him say about himself so much, or I was making the point of his clear NGE connection. I mean, I don't know, but I'm obviously not acknowledging him as, just like...
I understand totally. I
But I
understand
got you.
totally. It's like a stage name for him,
I got
but
you.
it's
Yeah.
not. But it's not. It's his name. You know
I
what I
got you.
mean?
Yeah. Well, check this out. This is something from somebody you maybe even know. Tackle General Universal ASA has said this a few times, and we've done a little bit of it, but let me make sure I interact. He says, "Tell the nation's history from our perspective, Lord." So I think I've seen a couple people that kind of asked you to do that. So the floor is yours if you'd like to do that.
All right. I'm glad somebody even said that because I actually took the liberty to put this in the chronological context so we can fully understand what we're talking about. Okay. So you mentioned in the last show that Allah was introduced to the Nation of Islam via his wife who had joined while he was still in service, right?
Yeah.
That is true. So Allah comes into the temple number 7, which is being ran by Brother Malcolm, you know, and is in 1960, and he's there until 1963 when he comes into his own understanding that what was being taught is not quite the reality of what God is, and this is not an idea that isn't promoted nor welcome within the walls of the mosque or the temple. You know what I mean? So he left. Now, here's where you have discord and misunderstanding as to how and why he left. I have several rebuttals for all of them, you know, because a lot of people, like especially on the Muslim side, will like to say that he was kicked out. But the whole thing with that is there's a due process. No one is just kicked out. You can be silenced, you can be suspended, you can have some type of disciplinary action, you know, but you're not just, bam, you're out of here. You know, it doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? So if you leave on your own accord, that's something different. And that's what happened. He left on his own accord, to my understanding, and began to teach on the streets of New York. Now, this is what the whole thing is about, because you have to look at what was going on, right? So in 1963, in the fall of 1963, this is when Allah leaves, right? Right after Allah leaves the temple or the Nation of Islam, JFK is assassinated, right? November 22nd, 1963.
Right.
Malcolm makes his infamous statement. You familiar?
Oh yeah. The chicken. As a country boy, I was never upset when the chickens came home to roost. And what he was saying by that is, America's visited violence upon everybody else, so I'm not real upset that violence is being visited upon America. Yeah, I got you.
So boom, and that's on December the 1st. He was asked a question by someone in the audience. Elijah told no one this, told everybody you can't speak on it. He did anyway. They say he was silenced, but you can't find any record of that aside from the movie. But if you look at the time from December the 1st to when he officially left the temple, the Nation of Islam, it's approximately 90-something days, which aligns with the time in which they said that he was silent. So you can almost confirm that that's what took place, right? So boom. After that, after he acknowledges what happens, that he's done with the nation and he's moving on, he takes flight and leaves the country for his pilgrimage, right? This is in April of 64. Like we're in 64.
And the FBI followed him all over the globe. Yeah.
But while everyone was looking at Malcolm over there and figuring out what he was doing, right in the streets of New York, just 4 days after he left, you have what's called the Little Fruit Stand riot with the Harlem Six. Now, if you're not familiar with what that is, I don't really have time to go into it, but it's very instrumental into the development of what we're talking about. So look up the Little Fruit Stand riot or the Harlem Six, right? Now, after that, like maybe less than 2 weeks later, you have the sugar stabbing, which is at the convenience store in blue or on the heels of the fruit stand riot, right? And then in June of this same year, this is all in 64. This is a very pivotal year in America's history. In June of 64, Malcolm comes out on the 24th. He comes out and announces, okay, I'm starting a new organization called the Organization of Afro-American Unity, the OAAU. Are you with that?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
He's
Boom.
trying to do something different there.
Something different. Right. So what happens July 2nd, 1964? Do you know?
Hold on. That's not when Clarence was assassinated, is it?
Oh, no. We're nowhere near there. July 2nd, 1964, President Lyndon Johnson signs the Civil Rights Act of 1964 on the heels of the Mississippi burning. Right? So prior to this moment, there is no civil rights yet. It gets signed in July of 1964. Right after that, you have a shooting in New York of a 15-year-old boy named James Howe in July 16th. This is when you have the Harlem riot, because an off-duty lieutenant, shoots a little boy and the streets go crazy. 2 weeks after that, you have the Rochester Rebellion. I'm only saying all of this because I'm trying to paint the picture of what was going on in New York at the time in which a law is coming out and teaching youth. It's like the city is on fire, and you have a man moving through trying to put the fire out one mind at a time. So you fast forward to October, respectively, the 10th of 1964, a law comes out and says, this is my nation. These are my 5%ers. Ranging from ages of 12 to 21 and all of that. You know what I mean? So after all this turmoil and all these problems going on, here comes a solution for the streets of New York, right? Now he does what, and also you have to factor in New York politics, because from 3 generations of the Wagner family was running the politics in New York. It wasn't until 1966 when Mayor Lindsay got in and things started to actually change for the betterment, to a degree, for original people in the ghettos, what we call ghettos in New York. But all of these things are very important to factor in when we're talking about the development of our nation, right? Not just ideologies, principles, and things of that nature. You know, so Allah is teaching from October 64 until he's arrested in May of 65. Right? Now, before he gets arrested, you have February of 65. You familiar what happens in February of 65?
That's when Malcolm was assassinated.
That's when Malcolm was assassinated. Exactly.
In the ballroom.
In the ballroom, right. So he's assassinated in February. Allah is arrested in May, and he stays in there for 22 months and doesn't get out until March 6th of 1967. And then you have the first, what we call a universal parliament, which is a gathering of all the guards and nerves, and we come and make your knowledge born. The first universal parliament, official universal parliament, is April 30th, 1967. I remember when I was listening to the show you had with the brother from PID, said that we had no meeting place and no, yeah, we do. It's the universal parliament. That's when we come together, you know. And the actual location that we have is, like you said, a law school in Mecca, which was given to Allah for his 5%ers by the mayor's assistant in association with the Urban League in July of 67 for 99 years, which is why it still stands to this day. Why would the mayor be working with Allah in that capacity?
Yeah, I know that they had a good relationship, and a guy who was the mayor's right-hand man put out a book called the Mayor's Man, and in that he spoke pretty favorably of the school. Yeah, and I think it had a different name as far as the school at that time, the Urban League or something like that.
Right.
But I know he spoke. That book's very difficult to get a hold of though these days.
Yeah. So yeah, one one real pivotal thing that takes place. And like I said, Allah was locked up from 65 for 22 months, basically from 65 to 67. But while he's locked up, the 5%ers continue to grow, and I mean grow, like from hundreds to every barrel. Like there wasn't nowhere you could go. You couldn't go where you didn't find a 5%er. And this is how later on in history you're going to be able to have so much influence in hip hop and all that, because this is where hip hop is born, at the same place that's riddled with 5%ers. You know what I mean? But before we get into all this hip hop stuff, we got to get there. You know, a lot of times everyone just links us to hip hop, and that's just that. And that's cool, but our history is way more in depth than just that, you know. So like I said, while he's locked up for those 22 months, the nation continues to grow. And then what happens is on July 29th of 65, about 17 to 18 young 5%ers was arrested in a roundup kind of thing that was going on in New York. And then the very next day, there was a telegram released called, quote, Harlem knows Allah as pudding, right? And so he's locked up at this time. So as you can, what I'm saying is there's a lot of attention and being brought upon the 5%ers, Allah, and this new development of this new thing that's going on, because you have to understand these are young boys going home to their mothers, or in the streets, or in the schools, and they're changing their names, they're changing how they eat. There's some of them are even loud and boastful with it, you know, saying you're a devil or you're that, and it's a lot of change going on right in the crux of New York. You know what I mean? So he's locked up, like I say, until 67, and he's released under the same name that he went in as, which is Allah. He was never, and the reason why he was locked up in the. Go ahead.
Well, but the thing is that he was like, so I hear what you're saying, but because he called himself Allah in the court, the judge thought that he was insane. Like if you look at the records about this, they deemed him as somebody who was delusional, and you know, they said this man thinks he's something he's not. And I've seen the court records where he's like, you know, you're supposed to address me this way and all of that. But I mean, that's part of the reason why the court said, hey, this guy might be not in touch with reality, because he thinks he's God in some sense of the word. So I know what you're saying. Yeah, he went in, but that was part of the reason why where he was in essentially a mental institution, was because of the fact that he was demanding people call himself this. And look, you know, just again, so everybody can understand, we believe that the Bible is revealed by the true God of the universe. And part of that, because I'm referring mainly to some people in the live comments real quick, and I'll totally let you continue and stuff, and part of that is Yahweh speaking to his covenant people at Mount Sinai. And part of what he says there is, he says, don't have any other gods before me. He also tells them not to make any idols, you know, an image of God. Then he also says, don't take the Lord God's name in vain. Those are the first 3 commandments. They're all directly related for how the creature is to properly relate to the creator. So the problem is, there's somebody in the live chat who keeps on telling me that I have to refer to people by these titles and whatnot, but it doesn't seem like that's how men should demand other men speak. Here's what I mean by that. I'm not telling you what words to use or not to use. I'm not telling the man in the chat what words to use and not use. It seems a disrespectful thing to say, you use this term or else. And what I'm saying is, you're asking me to blaspheme against God. So I know you may not agree with the perspective, but to the person in the live chat, understand, you're trying to tell me blaspheme against your God because I say so. That's how it looks, what you're saying to me right now. And I'm saying, who should I listen to, God or man? Which is what the apostles told the religious leaders of their day in Acts when they were arrested. And so I'm just simply saying the same thing, because I don't see how that's a respectful thing to demand for somebody to do. And so that's all I'm saying. Not necessarily to you, but I was just saying that to the guy there. in the live chat. But go ahead.
Oh, you're all right. Now, in regards to that, no, I'm not here to persuade anybody or to quote unquote convert or lead or whatever words you want to use in that fashion. I'm here to clear up some misinformation that was given, that I feel was given in the previous show, and to further elaborate on what we are about, and any type of way we can gain understanding of each other without having to bash. I'm cool with that too. Sometimes you have to agree and disagree and just walk away from the subject altogether. You know.
Right.
But in reference to us, back to us, you have to go to the next pivotal thing that happens in history, which is the assassination of Martin Luther King. That's the next pivotal thing that happens in history, and this is on April 22nd, 1968. And when this happens, you are very well informed. I would hope that America, Black America especially, didn't take that too well. And a lot of cities went under fire.
Yeah, and the nation, through the working together of the nation of gods and earths, and the mayor was able to prevent rioting in that part of New York. So yeah, I am aware of that. I think I mentioned that. I don't remember if I mentioned it in that show or another talk or lecture. But yeah, so I recognize that. And the city, to an extent, has recognized some of those achievements, with the naming of the street. And even,
that Brother Adam Clayton Powell, who had done great work in the city of New York, had to now share his street. That's how you said it. He had to now share his street with a law of 5%ers, as though a law and the 5%ers too have not been right there in the city of New York doing great things for the city.
It's not that. It's not that. The reason why I don't like that is because Adam Clayton Powell is a fellow Christian brother, and I see the good he did. And now, out of all the streets, why now it's got to be shared? That you got to understand, like.
That's where our school is.
Yeah. Now I understand, but
our school is, and it wasn't all. If I'm not mistaken, it wasn't always called Adam Clayton Powell.
Oh well, of course not. Of course not. Just
right. So it's 127th Avenue is what it really is. Right. It's 127th Avenue, which then became Adam Clayton Powell, and now the law and justice 5% square. Things evolve over time because everyone gets their just due when they're supposed to get it.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I recognize the achievement, like I said, of that. But again, none of that necessarily tells us if the claims of the nation are true. Like I don't really. Well, the key claim that there is no objective outside of man, self-eternal, self-existent God of the universe. So one of your foundational claims literally denies the very first verse of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. The philosophy that the 5% espouses says, nah, there is no self-eternal God. Exodus 3, Moses says, who should I say to Pharaoh sent me? He says, I am that I am. Yahweh, to be, the self-existent one. That was all denied, and instead, the creature is elevated to the position of almost a creator-like status. And that's why I asked you on the phone the other day about what's your perspective on the idea of being self-created out of triple blackness or triple darkness.
To quote, since you quoted from the Bible, I'll quote from the lesson where it says, Allah is God on earth and the heavens above, is just and true, and there is no unrighteousness in him, but he is not unseen. He is seen and heard everywhere, but he is the all-I-seeing. So I wouldn't go so far as to say that we deny the existence of God creating the heavens and earth, because it clearly in the lesson that Allah is God on the earth and the heavens above. So he definitely is the creator of that, and we say that Lord of all worlds, which is the founder and the maker of all those things. So I don't see how you and I would disagree in who created the heavens and the earth.
Well, now, for example,
go ahead.
God tells us to worship him as creator. Do you believe that the nation of gods and earths worships the God of Scripture as creator?
No, nation of gods and earth, or last 5% nation, the term I prefer to use.
Okay, I can use that.
We don't worship anyone. You know, it's
But
not.
why not? Why not though? If
Sense
you're
of worship, it's a degree of understanding that one comes into after gaining knowledge and wisdom of exactly what it is that we are dealing with. You know, you have to show and prove to me that there is an outside force that people have given qualities that only mirror individuals that are trapped in the reality of the Earth's atmosphere, like such as pronouns of he and physical features.
Well, the God of the Bible is invisible. The Bible says in John 4 that God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. That's Jesus speaking to the woman at the well. So the miracle of the incarnation is that you have a monotheistic religion, which says there's only one God who is invisible. He's distinct from creation in the sense that he's not trapped in it. Doesn't mean he can't interact with it though. And that God comes to earth in the person of Christ. So, like, I don't agree that we're giving God characteristics of man. I'll give you one example. We say God is eternal. No man is eternal because they all come into existence at a certain point in time.
What else do we know in existence that is also eternal that we can give a label to?
Nothing. Nothing in creation is eternal. Nothing is forever.
Nothing is forever? How would you define energy?
Energy is created. I mean, that's even the first law of thermodynamics in a sense.
Is it?
No new energy, can be created or destroyed. That means whatever is here is already here, but the question is, how did it get here, right?
Which is, always has been, and always will be. Will it continue to be in the form in which it once was? Perhaps not. Will it always be? Definitely, because the only thing that is constant is change. So the things that you may have seen or heard of in the past may not be in its present form, but does not mean that it does not exist to this day.
Right, I understand what you're saying about changing forms. Sometimes I hear members use the word essence, but you just said the only constant is change. That's the distinctive nature about the God of the Bible, is that he's called the rock. And in the Bible even says in Hebrews that he's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. There's an unchangeable aspect. Psalm 90, Moses says that he's the eternal God. And sometimes the Hebrews understood the mountains as sort of being a witness to things because they always seem to be there, and they're kind of watching in a colloquial manner, speaking from the distance, but they're there regardless of what happens, and they have a sort of solid aspect to them. So in Hebraic thought, they would use mountains to sort of testify to something that was old, and you see that kind of language being referred in relationship to God in reference to his eternality. For example, God says in Isaiah 43:10, he says that there's no other gods before me nor after me. There are no others. And then you have Jesus saying, I'm the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. So I'm just saying, not that there's no similarities in the philosophy. For example, you recognize I think, non-physical reality. If you were an atheist, you would be more materialistic in that you wouldn't recognize non-physical reality. So I think we have a similarity there in our worldviews, if I'm mistaken. You recognize the beauty and the grandeur of humanity. I think atheistic worldviews don't do that because they elevate, they denigrate, people down to the level of just simply evolved animals. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely fall in the same category of an atheist or with atheistic views
right.
and values. Sure,
that's what I was saying. That's what I was saying.
My thing is this: when it comes to the things that you're saying in regards to your belief system, is that you want, the same way you say, well, you want me to commit blasphemy for saying A, B, C, and D. You want me to accept the reality of a God that is invisible, who then manifested all visible things. That's almost, if not more, far-fetched than for an individual to accept that which he can see and comprehend for himself.
Well, why do you think it's illogical to believe that an invisible God who is all-powerful, why wouldn't he be able to create everything that we see? So just so you know the place
God is all powerful and that God didn't create everything that we see. I totally agree with that. I'm saying that God is not invisible. God is seen and heard everywhere, and is the all-eye seeing. God invisible? No.
Well, so yeah, Hebrews 11:3 is by just for people watching where I get what I just said. Now, if you mean that the evidence of who God is can be seen through creation, that's 100% accurate, and that's in Romans 1. Paul says that the invisible attributes, such as eternal power, majesty, glory, can be seen through the creation. And so that all men are left without excuse because we know we have a creator. If you're saying that, then I agree. There's no, like, Christians and 5%ers would agree on that point. But if you're saying that the very sort of original God, for lack of a better word, is in his essence a physical being, that seems problematic. Here's why. Anything that's physical is by definition limited or constrained. So you've got a God who's limited or constrained by physical dimensions.
Everything that's physical has a beginning. You can pinpoint the mark of it, and everything that has a beginning has an end. And at no point did I say that God was a physical, limited being. I never said that. I never said that. I said the black man is God, black being the dominant, man being the intelligence, being the God of the universe, the first form of existence that walks, encompassed and embodied in physical dense matter. This physical dense matter that is on your show right now, talking to you, is a representation or a physical production of what I, the divine, am. It's like a car. This is my car. The energy that makes up who I truly am, the divine God that is I am, is the driver of that car. Once this car has reached its mileage point, and there's no more fixing you can do, you can't get up under the hood no more, you can't change the engine, you can't, nothing is done. This car is out of here. To the junkyard it goes, or graveyard as we like to call them, it goes. The driver of this vehicle does not cease to exist with the car. The driver of this vehicle continues on his path. It's like your car break down on the side of the road. You might have to get out and walk for a while. It's the same kind of stuff.
That's where you hear the phraseology, if I'm correct, to say he returned to the essence. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. So there's not 100%. I think, so in Christian theology, 2 Corinthians 4:7-9 says, we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed. The point is that the affirmation is that the flesh could be described as jars of clay. But the scriptural teaching is that there's a resurrection and there's a glorified body, that there's a restored physical sort of perfected state, that still is a return of what man and woman ultimately are, which is body-soul unities, a dichotomy of two things that death temporarily separates. So we agree, an atheist, for example, would say, hey, you basically go back to being plant food, right? We agree that your consciousness doesn't cease to exist at the minute you take your last breath. But I think there's different questions about what happens after that. But check this out.
If your consciousness doesn't cease to exist before you take your last breath, then you would also have to agree that your consciousness did not begin when you took your first breath.
So that's an interesting question. The question is, if something in its current state has what we might call immortality, does that mean it automatically always had immortality? And so I don't think one follows, meaning, is it not the case that God create creatures who did not always exist, meaning they're dependent or they're contingent, they come into being at a certain point in time, and once he makes them, it's true, they forever exist in some form. But prior to that, there's no logical reason that says they had to have existed forever. Otherwise, everything is eternal. Do you believe that everything we see and everything in reality is eternal?
It has a beginning, has an ending. My physical composition has a birth date. There's a stamp on it. It's when it starts. It's when the sand in the hourglass was flipped over, and this is how much time you got. That's the dash. When it's over with, that's everything that can be physically formed can be physically taken apart as well. But that's when you are only looking at God and the law in the confines of a physical body. And I'm not. I'm saying that God or law is the energy that drives this body.
All right, I hear that perspective, and I think it's important for people to hear it too. Let's turn, if you're okay with it, because I want to make sure you feel 100% like cool with everything, you know what I mean? And so if you're okay with it, we'll turn to some questions in live chat, but I'll give you, if you want to say like one final thing, like, you know, if I cut you off or you didn't get to say something you wanted to say, whatever you want to say, and then we'll...
It's so much, like,
right.
I wanted to give a lot of history, you know, as regards to the makeup of things that led us to where we at. It's so much that's you can't really cover in a single conversation. This is something that you're going to have to really delve into and understand for yourself. Whether or not you agree with it when it's all said and done, that's neither here nor there. But you cannot deny the existence of the things that took place and the impact that it has left on America and the world overall. You know, so the 5%ers have always been and will continue to be instrumental in the education of youth in any area where you can find a 5%er at. You know, one thing I want to say before we do that is I want to quote a few people who talked about the 5%ers, like Attorney Sid Davidoff, who was also on Nixon's enemy list, stated that, and I quote, "The 5%ers were as important as anyone involved in preventing riots that night." That was in reference to the MLK assassination. Right. And I quote also Barry Goddard, "A law is a hard act to follow," right? And then you have to also quote Mayor Lindsay. After a law was assassinated, Mayor Lindsay actually went and visited a law school and sat with the brothers and said, "Brothers, I hope you know the sadness in my heart at Allah's death. His contribution was an important one in these last few years, most especially in the world of education." That's the mayor speaking about Allah. So again, I don't want to highlight hip hop when it comes to Allah's 5% Nation. I want to highlight the works that was done in the early developmental years. And that's the reason why we exist to this day, and we're able to exist long enough for hip hop to even be born, because we are the fathers of that as well. You can take
All right. No, thank you very much. All right. Here's a question. What ultimately is the end goal? This is from Dunamis. What ultimately is the end goal of the 5%ers? If all were 5%ers, what would this world look like?
What ultimately is the end goal of 5%ers? Well, you have a thing that we call what we will achieve, and on that is national consciousness, community control, and peace. That's it. National consciousness, community control, and peace. The ability to think for ourselves freely and collectively and be able to move towards a common goal with control of our own communities in peace, which is the absence of confusion and disturbance. We have yet to have that since, as a people, let alone 5%ers, but as a people, since even arriving on this country, there has yet to be a time where there was no disturbance. So that is it. Awakening our people, controlling our own communities, and being able to live in peace. That's not an end game though, because like you don't end, like that's a continual process. Because anything, anytime can come in and attempt to disrupt that. So you have to constantly promote the idea of love, peace, and happiness to every generation behind you.
All right, thank you very much. Umar Majahid asks, do they, the 5%ers, believe in heaven and hell?
Heaven and hell. These are conditions and states of existence and states of minds. Hell is what you go through. Heaven is what you make it. Because what's heaven to you may not be heaven to me.
All right, thank you. Mark Cleveland asks you, ask him if he believes he is an upright man, and what is his measuring stick by which he judges himself?
I like that. Well, yes, of course I will. I don't. Well, I don't believe anything. I know that I'm an upright individual. I'm not out here murdering anybody. I'm not out here deceiving anybody. I spend the majority of my time striving to help, educate, uplift, and aid and assist anyone as much as I can, doing my duty as a civilized person. So anyone who is civilized and who is righteous, I would think would see themselves as being an upright individual. And in regards to the measuring stick I'm using, that's the 18th letter. That's the ruler. That's the ruler where you have to measure yourself and weigh yourself against yourself. There's no other individual on this planet that I can weigh myself to and say, well, I need to be more like that, or more like this, or more like that. I can only weigh my current self with my previous self and the self that I'm looking to build in the future. That's the measuring stick I weighed against.
All right, thank you very much. And I just had a good question. Oh, here we go. Flower 2009 DC says, "How do you define evil?"
Evil, I would look at it the same way Elijah Muhammad did. We're talking about wickedness, and that's when your acts have not only affect you in a negative manner, but also everyone else around you, and anyone you come in contact with. That would be the equivalent to evil. Evil and wickedness is one and the same.
All right, thank you. And somebody says, hold on, where did that question go? Oh, Umar Mujahid asks, can a white man become a 5%er? Now, I already know the answer. We've already talked about this, but I'll let you answer.
Let me give you the textbook definition of a 5%er for those listening, because it actually is one. And it says, lessons say, who are the 5% on this poor part of the planet Earth, right? And it says, the poor righteous teachers who do not believe in the teachings of the 10%. They are all wise and know who the true living God is, and teach that the true living God is the Son of Man, supreme being, black man from Asia, who teaches freedom, justice, and equality to all human families of the planet Earth, otherwise known as civilized people, also Muslims and Muslim sons. There's no ethnicity mentioned in that definition. So yes, a Caucasian, a Korean, whatever your is not limited. The door is open because anyone can be a 5%er. Just like anyone's, like when you talk about the 5, the 85, and the 10, that breakdown there, that's not talking about just this particular branch of people. That's the total population of the world. So yes, white people can be 5%ers. In fact, there are quite a few Caucasian 5%ers. Some I know personally, some that I don't.
All right. Oh, go ahead. Were you gonna say something?
No, I was just gonna say in regards to that is that the duty is to teach your people. If you're a Caucasian and you have an interest in being a 5%er, you learn the truth and you go back and you teach your people.
All right. So where it I don't know if I want to. Oh man. I'm looking at the lessons of relationship to Yakub. I wonder if we should get into that, but I'm looking at the time and maybe we don't really have time to do it, but I think it'd be interesting in relation to the question. But let me ask this instead. Somebody asked, and I'm going to put it on the screen once I find it again. They said, what do you do with your sin? It's Rafaela Kaufman says, what do you do with your sin?
With my sin? How is he defining sin?
So, sin in biblical understanding is anything that falls short of the glory of the God. It's missing the mark. It's not adhering to the spirit of what God has laid down for man to do. Those are some of the things you might say.
Okay. Well, it's real simple. We have this saying, striving for perfection, and it will get greater later. The whole concept is to continue to work on yourself. If something happens where I fall short in any regards of my life, and I continue to just stay there and dwell there, that's the problem. If I rise up out of that, see it for what it is, and do better, I'm striving for perfection.
All right, all right. Thank you very much. We have where'd it go? All right, here's a Jeffrey D says, "Do 5%ers believe in biblical prophets?"
Well, again, I know they're using the word belief because that's what they're familiar with, but I would have to continue to emphasize that 5%ers do not believe in anything. It's a matter of whether you know it or you don't. And that's a big problem when it comes to the concept of religion, because religions are primarily based on belief. There's no way you can actually know certain things that religions introduce you to. So, do I bear witness to the existence of the prophets of the Bible? There are a few historical accounts that you can find outside of biblical texts that indicate the existence of some people that are mentioned there, but I don't put a lot of stock into it. Like the lessons you have an individual named Musa, and we know that's the Arabic equivalent to Moses. However, if you look at timelines, the existence of Moses doesn't quite match up with the timeline of the existence of Musa that's mentioned in the lessons. So the theory of them being the same person is kind of shaky. So I don't invest too much stock into that. Whether they existed or not, I look at the principles presented, and if I can gain something from it, then so be it. If not, I'll leave it alone.
Do you think the folks in the Supreme Wisdom lessons should also be attested to in outside sources as well?
I think everything you come across is supposed to be verified.
So,
I think you're supposed to research everything. It's just like there's nothing. There's a lesson that says you don't take anything on face value. So it's just this is what it is. I'm just gonna accept it because that's what it says. No, that's not what it's about. Once you get that information, you're supposed to take it and then put it against the test of time, put it against whatever, and weigh it for yourself and see if it holds up to be true or not. And for me, everything that I have put to the test that exists within the lessons in regards to locations or individuals who are mentioned and things of that nature, I've been able to draw back some type of reference point that I can go to.
Do you believe Yakub is attested to in outside sources besides the lessons?
There's a few said sources like in Kemetic texts or whatnot, but with Yakub, that is a touchy, as you want to call it, subject, because a lot of people subscribe to the actual physical existence of an individual, and then others subscribe to the idea of this is an allegorical story and is told in this manner in order to get the point across.
But doesn't Yakub need to be a historical figure because it gives actual dates that he did things in history? Or do you allegorize the dates given? Because there's actual dates. You're putting timestamps on something that kind of takes away. That's different than a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. You know what I mean?
No, I totally understand. And what time frame we're speaking on is actually the equivalent time frame to the so-called creation of man that's mentioned in the Bible. If you line up Yakub's so physical existence and then the making of the devil, you're gonna come up with the same time. Like I told you in the comment section in the message we had about the BC calendar versus the AC calendar, which is the Asiatic calendar. And if I'm not mistaken, I never asked you, but I'm sure that most Christians give the creation of time around 4000 BC, somewhere around there.
It depends if they're what you call old Earth creationists or young Earth creationists. But yeah, regardless of the calendar, you still have Yakub acting in history on historical dates, don't you?
Say it again?
You still have, regardless of which calendar is used, you still have Yakub acting in history on actual historical dates, don't you? According to the lessons.
I wasn't saying that. What I'm saying is I'm giving you the correlation between what people was created by Yakub and what people were said to be created in the Bible, and how it lines up together, and how these are actually the same story of people being created. Where it says, "Let us make man in our image." Who is us?
Oh, that's the triune God of Scripture: Father, Son, Holy Spirit. That's the us. So all you got to do for that is like you compare Genesis 1 to John 1, and you see that's a triune God of Scripture, for example. But that's the answer to the question of who is the us.
The creation theory has its own holes anyway, because if you look at the concept of a day, like
Yom in Hebrew, yeah.
Right, Yom, exactly, which is a full actual day. Not just the part day, a whole day, like a 24-hour cycle. The problem with that is
whenever it has a cardinal number attached to it, like first day, second day, it is a 24-hour day. You are correct.
Right. Now the problem with that is 24-hour day cycles are calculated by the rotation of the earth around the sun.
Yeah, and the sun's not created to the fourth day, but there's no reason why God couldn't still have 24-hour cycles before the sun.
But how can you have any cycle at all if there's nothing to revolve around?
You can still have a 24-hour period. God himself is a light source. Remember, in the beginning it says God created the light. Let there be light, right? So the sun is not, the sun's creation is delayed to show that the sun was not an object of worship like all of Israel's cultural neighbors. They all worshiped the sun. A great example is the Egyptians with Amun-Ra. And so the fourth day delay of the sun shows the sun is not supreme in any way. And so there's a purposeful reason why God did that. And it was sort of a lesson in even how it's done. But there's God before that still keeping time, because he says the evening and the morning are the first day. So there's still a way. I mean, you got to remember this whole week is a supernatural week. But I know the what you're trying to bring up, but I think there's fine answers for it. We don't have to see a contradiction where there is none, I think.
Right. I just think it's difficult to calculate or map out exactly what a day is, because we know the 24-hour cycle is based on what we know it to be on. For you to say it's 24 hours, hours are calculated in the course of the time. So how are you calculating time if there's nothing to base it on?
Well, I'm not sure if you can have. I think you can have time without the sun. The 24-hour aspect relates to the sun, but you can. Time is simply a progression of moments, and in the very first verse it says, "In the beginning." So that shows you right in the beginning, God is actually creating time itself. He creates matter, energy, space, and time right there in Genesis 1. And this is why I find the biblical narrative so compelling. Partially is because you have all the necessary components for creation. If you read the accounts of other ancient Near Eastern deities, where, like, for example, there's one named Marduk, they have things going on where a god sneezes himself into existence. I'm not kidding you, by the way. Or where two gods are having some kind of sexual relationship, and the semen drips out and it creates all the people on the earth. Or two gods are fighting and one snaps the other in half, and the contents of the snapped in half deity create the earth. You get all these bizarre things. None of them actually deal with the very beginning of everything out of nothing, which matches really a scientific understanding, because then you have things coming into being versus, and that matches with a simple principle of logic, which you could say cause and effect, or the principle of sufficient reason, meaning for every effect there has to be a cause. So what is the cause of the creation? Because the creation is certainly effect. It's the God of the universe. When I see the 5% understanding of origins, it looks, to be honest, muddled or confused, because you have beings creating themselves out of something that already exists, because triple darkness is a thing.
You would need ignorance, and that's what I was about to go into. You would have to have a thorough understanding of that concept, and honestly, that is probably a whole show within itself, just understanding the concept of triple stages of darkness.
I got you. Yeah, we're covering a lot, and because I know there's a certain time in which
there's no way you can squeeze in
the
concept of triple stages of darkness and self-creation into 5 minutes real quick to give an understanding to you, let alone the entire listening audience. But yes, we do subscribe to the concept and the idea and reality of being himself created through the idea of triple stages of darkness.
I got you. There's only a few more questions I think we can get to, and then we need to make sure we end. That way everyone can be with their family, as we talked about earlier. Rafaela asks, why do you reject the gospel?
When did I ever say I rejected the gospel? Raphael? I said earlier I use all knowledge to benefit myself, regardless of where it comes from. That's a quote from Allah himself. And also, if you have access to lessons, you will see where it says who made the Holy Quran, the Bible, how long ago, and we tell us why Islam runs its history every 25,000 years. And it states in there that the original man himself is the author of the Holy Quran and the Bible. And so I don't reject any text that's considered to be holy or scripture and things of that nature. When I read, I'm looking for facts. I'm looking for the truth. I'm looking for what resonates. I don't reject anything, because all of it can be useful. So I actually don't even recall using the word reject at all in this conversation. Raphael, where do you get that from?
I think, to understand where he's coming from, I think he's probably saying that basically by some of the stuff he.
Am I not a Christian?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because the narrative of saying that we're all fallen humans who sin and come short of the glory of God and needs God's grace to be in proper relationship with Him, so we can experience His mercy instead of His wrath. You know, the basic essence of the gospel, and that the cross event is what changed all that. And so those who believe the cross event is what God said it is, say in 1 Corinthians 15, those are God's people. You know, that whole narrative, I think that a person could see that's not really something that you hold to, unless I'm really, really off in understanding.
And even with that, you know, even with, like I said, with the cross theory and all that, I mean, even the crucifixion itself is up for examination. But why am I not a Christian? I was, Raphael.
Okay.
I was a Christian at one point in time. I actually was introduced to the nation, and the guys and nurses, you call them, the Lost 5% Nation, in my teenage years. You know, I'm not from the East Coast. I'm not from the New York Barrows, none of that. I'm born and raised in Lexington, Kentucky. You see that? UK hat. Yeah, I'm born and raised in Lexington, Kentucky is where I got it as a teenager. You know, and so my connection and understanding of it was very different than a lot of people, because I'm coming from a Southern, you know, environment where the view of Black people was different, as well as the Bible Belt kind of concept of Christianity is where I'm from. You know what I mean? So I had a lot of questions that people couldn't answer. And this is after I was introduced to the Nah, because it wasn't like I was just running around asking a bunch of questions like, yo, why this, why that, why this, why that? But when I met a 5%er who became my educator, and he started dropping certain jewels on me, and then I would go back and ask questions that people couldn't answer, and then I go look it up myself, or I'd be informed by God, and he started teaching me, giving me more breadcrumbs to go find the answers, and things started like a domino effect. It started to make more sense. So yeah, that's what I subscribe to, because I'm going to roll with that which is, not that which could be. So you feel
or you would say, I'll put it in the way you might prefer to say it, you know that the culture and knowledge and understanding of Allah's 5% nation is certain or right, true, and exact, whereas Christianity is uncertain, or something like that? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, any read, like Allah said, and I'll quote him, kill all religion. Those are Allah's words. And he says that because religion is divisive, it can distract, it can tear families apart. It has been used as a tool to dominate other people, because prior to slavery, when and where did original people actually refer to their Lord and Savior as Jesus Christ? Like, we were introduced to that by the same people who captured us.
Well, can I say something about that? Because the West Africans, maybe the West Africans, but not the North and Central Africans,
So you're talking about Ethiopia and all that, and Gnostic Church and all
What
that. I mean, I
Egypt, Morocco, Libya, like all these North Africa and Central Africa, even the Sudan to an extent, but like those places, they were not introduced to Christianity by the sword at all. In fact, those are some of the oldest Christian kingdoms and empires in the world. You know what I'm saying? I mean, check this out. This is an interesting thing, I think. I hear what you're saying with that, and I don't deny, basically, for the most part, when it comes to West Africa, that's true. And I think that's a tragedy and a travesty and no excuse. And I wish it could be different, but I can't change history. But when it comes to North and Central Africa, it's a totally different historical narrative. Even in Acts chapter 9, you got the Ethiopian eunuch. But that's not the only one. You got Simon in Acts chapter 13. But here's what's interesting. It seems to me in some ways, and I don't know if you've heard this discussed before, I was just thinking about this today, the Allah's 5% nation itself seems, for lack of a better word, Western-based or Eurocentric in some ways. And now let me explain myself real quick. Here's what I mean by that. The whole supreme alphabet is based upon Anglo-Saxon lettering system, a Teutonic language. It's European. The supreme alphabet is based upon a white people's language. Has anyone ever interacted with that?
I get what you're saying, but I mean, let's be real. I'm wearing an American style hat. I have on an American style shirt. I'm speaking an American language. My diet, up until I got knowledge of myself, was an American style diet. It's all why? Because we have been westernized to that effect. You take a people and you put them here and you strip them of their original tongue and you give them one, they're gonna make do with the best that they have. You strip them of their original garments, they're gonna make do with what you give them. So yeah, we are speaking the English language and we're using the English alphabet and we're using, well, even though the numbers are called Arabic numerals, but we're using the Arabic numerals. I mean, we're pieces of it's a mosh podge, so to speak, to make who and what we have become based on what's been done to us. I mean, do you think if we knew our natural tongue, we wouldn't be speaking it? No, I mean, we didn't have the opportunity because it was taken from us. So yeah, we're gonna utilize the language that we know that has been bestowed, that has been given to us generation after generation after generation. Aside from the language of mathematics given to me by Allah, English is the only other language I can speak fluently. I know a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of Arabic, but English is the only other language I can speak fluently, and that's for most as they call African Americans, or as I call original people in the wilderness of North America. Of course, this is going to be the language that we use. Why? We're going to try to connect to something that we don't know of, where we might be Moroccan, or we might be Kiswahili, or it might be Kemetic, or it might not. We don't know what it is. That's why all of us end up going on our own personal journeys and doing genealogy tests and all that kind of stuff to find out exactly where we physically come from, because we don't have that accessible to us at our fingertips.
Right. Well, I appreciate that answer, and I appreciate your time. This is close to the time we said we need to make sure we end to be with our families. I'll again give you a chance to say whatever you want to at the end, but let me just give a shout out to everyone in the live chat. Hopefully you guys appreciate, I know I couldn't shout out everyone the whole show, but hopefully you guys do appreciate that I did try to get to a number of questions, and I think he did a great job of answering in a pretty concise way, and I hope everyone appreciated that, because part of what we wanted to do is clear up misconceptions. I told you in the beginning we're going to be able to get to every difference or cover everything, but this is introductory and I hope helpful. And real quick, there was a Christian in here, Medic for Christ, who was asking me about my view of sin and punishment. I don't know if I misspoke or you misunderstood something, but I most certainly believe that sin must be punished. Medic for Christ, I most certainly believe that God is a just God, and so that's why the cross had to happen, because it's not like God sweeps it under the rug. Sin is dealt with in a righteous way by there being a substitutionary atonement, the sacrifice of Christ. So I most certainly believe that. So I'm not sure if I misspoke or you misunderstood what I was saying, but most certainly. And I even quoted Romans 3:23 or paraphrased it, Romans 6:23 I think a few times throughout the show. So hopefully that was understood. But last words from you. You want to say, and then
yeah, say thank you for having me first and foremost. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I appreciate the opportunity. You sharing your platform to address anything that we wanted to talk about in regards to it. I want to say peace to all the gods and the earths who tuned in. Thanks for adding on. I hope by fast and build that you walk away from this as I do, feeling as though we were able to gain greater understanding. Nothing was really left out. If you feel as though I could have said this or I could have said that, then go ahead and hit me up like I know y'all will. It's all good either way. Thanks to everyone who is on the path of learning and open to the idea of understanding something new beyond what they've been taught. Because that's pretty much where we at with this. You know what I'm saying? We're not just on the street corners no more. We're not just in the prison houses, as they like to say. No, we're not just hip hop heads. No, we're in the college. We're in the boardrooms. We're in the positions of power now. It's time for people to look at the 5%ers in a new light outside of just MCs and prisoners. So that's what a person like myself is here to do, to paint that an improved picture of what the 5% is all about. My phone about to die, man, so I gotta get out of here.
All right, hey, I appreciate you coming on, and a couple people said, hey, it'd be cool to have you back. I don't disagree with that. And let me say to any other members or adherents, I'd be willing to talk to you as well. I know some people will be like, not interested. I get that. But if you are interested, just hit me up. If I don't respond right away, please don't be offended. Just give me a little bit of time. I try. And if someone says, oh, I want to say something different, or, we had a discussion that was chill, I'm willing to do, it doesn't have to be this, but just so you know, I'm willing to do debates. Like if someone said, I want to do more of a debate format, or like, that's okay too. Just let me know, and context determines how I try to move. And so I'm cool with whichever way, whatever. But I appreciate it today. Now let me say to y'all too, I do not know right now, but I'm considering maybe going live tomorrow about a different topic, which is there's been another Hebrew Israelite who murdered his girl. It's a pretty tragic story. I just found out about it. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it. I'm debating if I'm going to do it tomorrow because I might have to do it earlier, like an afternoon. So just be aware of that. Watch the channel on the social media. And pray also this weekend as David Wood and John McCrae and Apostate Prophet, myself and some others are going to be doing some recording for the series that's now on Acts 17 Apologetics. Lastly, are there any social media channels you want to tell people to subscribe to or anything to check out online? And that could be the final thing, and then we'll jump out.
Yeah. Who _is _135 on Instagram, the real 135 on Twitter, and just hit me up if you want to build. That's pretty much some hip hop stuff. You want to work with me on some music, check me out. I do music, all that too. But I'm primarily a content creator these days and times. So just hit me up if you want to build, man. I'm ready when you are.
All right. Hey, God bless. Thank you very much for coming on. I hope you have a fantastic night.
Likewise, man. Peace.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, everybody, check it out. I know you guys are still here. I do got to go as well, so, it is ending. But let me just say, I know that I owe the Street Apologist Squad, I owe you guys quite a few freestyles. Not going to do the freestyles tonight. It won't work tonight, but we are going to get to them, so don't worry. I know we didn't have any super chats tonight, and that's all right. Sometimes that's how it is. But we are going to get to those freestyles nonetheless, so stick around for that as well. And I appreciate everyone being pretty cool tonight. I feel like everything was respectful and peaceful and all that, and I appreciate that. Someone said they wouldn't come on the show because I'm biased. Well, there's a certain sense in which that's true. I don't deny that I'm a Christian. I don't deny that that's my perspective. But that doesn't mean I'd have to be unfair or rude to you. You know what I'm saying? I hope that you see that tonight, that just because that's the case of I am who I am, doesn't mean it couldn't happen. But again, it's no big deal. It doesn't have to happen. So with all that being said, much love to y'all. God bless. Let me play a little, just a beat. I know we already played the intro and we played a beat, but Soko's been sending me so many dope beats. Oh, hey, thank you, Enoch, for the super chat. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thanks, Vocab. Muslims, Jesus loves you. All right, interesting. Let me play a little outro song here that I think is pretty dope, because Soko be sending some real fantastic stuff. So let me send one that he sent recently, and that's kind of what we'll end on that. Which one did that go? Hold on, just give me a second. This one right here is what we'll end on. All right, y'all. God bless. Peace out. Shalom.